Hi there, welcome back to the Matura Express English. And if you have no idea what basic signposting is, then you need to stay tuned. Yes, perfect. Okay, so today the topic is basic signposting, and what this is all about is organizing, ordering your ideas. And we will go about it like the following. First, in the next point, I will tell you about the importance of signposting, of basic signposting in an oral exam, why it is important, why you should do it, and what it basically is. And then I will follow up with giving you useful phrases for firstly for an introduction and an overview, then for adding ideas, then for giving example, and the last one is for summarizing and concluding. So what you have to know is that basic signposting is basically only for task 1. We will go, and like in a few weeks there will be something for task 2 for like connecting and linking words and such, but signposting is really about when you give a talk, when you give a speech, a presentation, so all what you have to do in task 1, all the different tasks. Okay, so yes, so we concentrate on task 1. Write that on your notes. So then why is it important to signpost in an oral exam? And this is why. Signposts and signpost language you call words and phrases that you use to guide your listener through your presentation. It's basically the same as when you sit down and write an exam, and then you put one thought into a paragraph, and then you start the next, and you indent your paragraph. But you can't do that in a presentation. Therefore, you use words to guide the listener through, to make clear what has happened before, where you're now, and what will happen next. Yeah, so it's a real guidance, and these are words like in the following, firstly, secondly, thirdly, in my presentation, I would like to talk about next, and so on. It's no magic, it's just these phrases, and you will have to know when to use them. One important part is also for signposting, you have to respect your role, because there are certain ways of signposting that you will rather use in the business section than in all the other sections. I basically went through the exams we have on our YouTube channel, and I made up like 3 categories. The first is same, meaning where you're kind of like the same level as the presenter and the listener. I will get into that in a moment. Then the enthusiastic mode, where you really want to convince people about your idea or your company. And then the business tone, where you kind of give presentations in a very formal way. So what I mean by same is you talk to your friends, you give a presentation in front of classmates, because that reflects on your style. Your style is far more informal, sometimes even colloquial, especially when you just talk to your friends and talk about books versus e-books and stuff, okay? So like an example situation for that is you have recently returned from an exchange year in a British secondary school. You have been asked to give a short talk to your English class about the UK education system. That is a good example for being like not that formal, being more informal, maybe even colloquial. For the following phrases, I will use that situation when we talk about signposting, okay? And then the next one is the enthusiastic mode. There's the examples are you're a life coach, you're a counselor in front of students, and your style is formal but not too much. You're kind of like a happy, extroverted, positive person, full of energy, full of ideas, and that is how you choose your signposts. One example situation that I will use in the ongoing presentation is you work as a promoter of traveling. You have been asked to hold a seminar for teachers, parents, and secondary students on the positive effects of traveling. Sorry, some typos. So you have to be very positive, very energetic. And then the last section is the business section. You're talking in front of colleagues, business associates. Your style is formal. You present relative facts or discussions. You're businesslike. So your signposting will change with that, and you will see in a minute. Situation, you work, one is enough, for a trade union and have been asked to hold a presentation on the International Workers' Day for representatives of other trade unions about the problems of the working poor. So very formal, yeah? It's a big conference, a lot of people in business suits, different use of signposts here. And let's get into an example right away. Here are some useful phrases for giving an introduction and overview. Introduction is what's the topic, overview is how you're going to deal with it, okay? So your basic, with these signposts, you basically want to tell your listeners what you're talking about and how you will show them your topic. Don't underestimate them. It's really comfortable for a listener when you tell them, this is my topic and I'm going to present you 3 reasons why this is a good development. I'm going to present you 3 studies that show that this is a negative effect or something like that. Okay? So it's really, then your listener knows what to expect and what to watch out for. So an example for when you talk to students in front of your class, we have the example that you've recently returned from an exchange year and you have to give a short talk. What could you do for your introduction? You could say, today I want to show you the difference between the UK and the Austrian education system. My presentation is about the UK education system. What I'm going to be talking about today is obviously the UK education system. These are all very, very good introduction and topic sentences, but they're not like highly formal. They're perfectly fine for that role. And then you like in that kind of talk, you focus on your own experiences. So that's why you say, I'm going to talk about subjects, timetable, a third topic. Yeah, or I have prepared for you 4 different topics to talk about, and then you name them. First, I will talk about this. Then I will talk about that. Okay, that's a difference between introduction and overview. This will take you less than a minute to say, but it will take your listeners, it will comfort your listeners so much that you shouldn't underestimate that. Then the enthusiastic mode, for when, what is the example? You're a promoter of traveling and you talk in front of teachers, parents and secondary students. So you're more like in this enthusiastic mode, you want to like reach out and draw connection to your listeners, and you're really like this happy person. You're a promoter. You want to promote your ideas. So this morning we are going to take a look at what's it? Promoting of traveling, about like what positive effects traveling can have on you. Today I want to share with you the wisdom of traveling, or the positive effects of traveling, and my talk will show you, so you're very convincing, the positive effects of traveling on your personal development. Yeah, so you see the difference between the same enthusiastic mode, and then you go on for structuring. First we'll look at, then, so you're creating kind of like this suspense. Okay, first, then, third, then we'll go on, and finally, okay, all this happy person, promoter guy style. Then the business part, and that is very different, and maybe, probably, I don't know, you decide the most difficult one, but that's why we are here and discussing that, okay? Here you have to be more objective, more like the factual type of person. So today I'll be discussing the problems of the working poor. My talk is concerned with the problems of the working poor. You usually use these vocabs like discussing, because when you are on that business level, you usually discuss topics. You don't just present them, you're discussing them because you're on this very scientific level where you really want to change something, or talk about problems that are not like set and done, but are still in development. Does that make sense? I hope so. Okay. And then you're also more clear, objective in giving an overview. I'm going to divide this talk into 4 parts. Yeah, it's way more neutral than the first 2 bubbles. There are a number of points I'd like to make, or basically, briefly, I have 3 things to say, and then you go on. Okay, so be very clear, very neutral, then go on. Okay, this is for giving an introduction overview. Then you obviously have to give the listeners ideas, and you obviously not only have one idea, but many, and you signal the listener that there's more to your idea or argument than just one point, yeah? Because you're so complex in your thinking that you have at least 3 or 4 ideas that you need to add. And this is how you show your listener that you will do that. Again, same, you're the British, you are the exchange student. No, you're the student returned from an exchange year. You talk about the education system, and then you make a new point. You add a new point to the one before. Moving on now to, meaning like, hey, attention back, or turning to. Let's turn now to a new topic. I'd like to add that there's also a big difference in how the co-education works. Okay, so these are all 4 like signal phrases that you're going to add something new. Hey, listen to me, I have something else to say. Okay. Then, when you're the promoter, again, promoting traveling or the positive effects of traveling. Now we'll move on to, let's look now at another positive effect, which is meeting new cultures. And I'd now like to talk about how you can experience new senses while traveling. The next topic I'd like to focus on is traveling on your own with no friends. Like that, okay? Here these phrases are a bit more sophisticated, because you're the promoter, you want to really convince people that you're promoting the right thing. So here you have to be more like, hello, I'd like to talk about something new. It's important. Listen to me. Okay? Then the business thing is very different, more sophisticated. At first sight, it seems a bit more complicated, which is, but let me say this right here. You don't have to remember all of these signposts. Yeah, when you recap this presentation or this video, then just go back and find maybe the two signposts for like each chapter that you, or for each section that you feel comfortable with, and then remember them. Okay, I'm just giving you like a variation so that you can choose from. Okay, so let's get back. It's again the trade unions, and you talk about the working poor. One aspect which illustrates that the working poor are rising can be identified as, and then you on, and then you show a study, then you show numbers, whatever. The current debate about working poor has become more and more important to today's politics. Okay, the final section, that is how you enumerate in a business style, provides a general discussion of, and then you put in your idea. Building on from the idea that, so from the idea before, this section illustrates that, the next. To further understand the role of politics in rising numbers of working poor, this section explores the idea that. So it's very elaborate. It's very it's a different level of language, and you need that if you're asked to take over a role that I declared as business section. Okay, but don't worry. Just take 2, and you'll be perfectly fine. Next one, giving examples, like useful phrases for giving examples, because your talk won't be good, or your presentation, if you can't come up with an example for your idea. And this is how you can make that. I mean, you can make as many points as you want, but an argument becomes clear when you give statistics, numbers, famous cases, news headlines from the past year, developments that are part of current discussion, or even personal examples, but probably not in the business section. Business section means facts, general truths. Okay? So, giving examples. For when you are an exchange or a returned exchange student, you could say it's enough if you say, for example, a good example of this is my experience with the headmaster. As an illustration, I want to talk about the incident that happened last school year. To give you an example, I'm going to show you or going to remind you of something. To illustrate this point, let's have a look at, okay? Or let's think about. So this is enough. That's signposting enough, because then your listener knows, oh, example, something funny, something nice to hear. Enthusiastic mode. You're the promoter of traveling. Talk about positive effects of traveling. You could say, I mean, here it's kind of like really the same, but this graph, this image, this video demonstrates that traveling is so positive for your personal development. I'd like to illustrate this by showing you pictures of what people looked like after they came home from the travels. Okay, the last 2 examples are more elaborate than the first 2, so maybe if you want to show your level of speaking, you would choose them instead of the first two. But the first two are for, again, completely okay for that section. Then again, the slightly, or no, majorly different business section. Again, your trade union is talking about the problems of the working poor. It's in here, this is the thing, data from the last 10 years suggests that there have been a severe rise in the working poor. Research shows that there have been major impacts on the life of the working poor. This evidence agrees that according to a study by, so if you compare them to what I've shown you before, it's really not about your personal feeling, your personal emotions. It's about data, research, evidence, studies. If you don't remember like the exact study from your coursework, then maybe you have to make something up. Or you have to, you will find some data and some research and some evidence to put in your talk, okay? Last point. Use of phrases for summarizing and concluding. And again, this is as important as the introduction and the and giving the overview. Yeah, it's like telling your listener, hey, I'm going to wrap it all up. I'm going to tell you like the core I've been talking about, and I'm going to summarize everything I've said. Oh, showing, there's a G missing. And this is how I've come to this conclusion. And that's why my conclusion is a good one, because I have made that and that point, and it's a straight way to this conclusion. Yeah? If you're a student talking to students, you can use these phrases. To conclude, in conclusion, this concludes my presentation. Now, if I can just summarize the main points, these were bam, bam, bam. I think we've just about seen everything now. Let's take a look back at what we've seen. We've seen that. And then you just, it's a real quick, a quick enumeration of what you've done. Yeah, no long sentences, just like I've talked about this, that, and this, and finished. The three main points are, and that's why global warming has a negative effect on our everyday life, or will have. The enthusiastic mode. You can be a bit more like talkative or a bit more elaborate. Well, that brings us to the end of the final section. Now I'd like to summarize by giving you a short overview, by mentioning the main arguments I've given you. Or so it's clear from what we have discussed today that I am right and you're wrong, or something like that. That would not be a good example, but that traveling has a positive effect on everyone. Let's summarize briefly what we've looked at. We've looked at this, we've looked at that, we've looked at further things. Business section is again a bit different. You have to be more neutral. So something like, clearly this talk has like you in the business section, you can't just say, okay, I'm right, because you kind of have to prove really the way you've come. So clearly this talk has shown that the main factors which impact upon the working poor are a wrong political agenda, poor working conditions, and a last point. The evidence a second example, the evidence presented in this presentation has shown that clearly the working poor are a result of a failed political agenda from the last 10 years. To conclude, this talk has addressed a number of significant issues which show that the working poor are not only a problem of the next 4 years, but will be a major problem for our future. That's it. Yeah. Again, I remind you, choose for every bubble, or for every section, choose the 2 phrases or the 2 sentence structures that you feel most comfortable with, and then you should be fine. This brings us to the end, and I have a call for action for you, and this one goes as follows. You sit down, or not, but you decide. You sit down and you find phrases or a signpost language that thank the listeners and invite them to ask questions and to discuss the topic any further with you, because that is what is asked of you in task 2. That's kind of like the transition between the end of your presentation, task 1, and then going over to task 2. And it's in most exams it reads, after your presentation you open the discussion up to questions from your listeners about this and that. So how do you do that other than just asking, do you have any questions? Okay, come up with a more sophisticated way for the business style, with a very happy related topic for the enthusiastic mode, and with a just basic one for the same mode. Okay, and this is your call for action. I will just briefly refer to that in the next video when we have the demo exams. And then that's it for today, I guess. If you don't have any questions, no. So I'll see you next week with the demo exams. I have forgotten what the topic is about. Oh yeah, it's about traveling and environment. So if you're interested in that, tune in again. And until then, I wish you all the best.